12 years later, the scene is a chaotic high school classroom. Welcome to the prestigious Gokusai Academy, a place filled with vibrant, popular students, and their utterly exhausted homeroom teacher, Mr. Haizora. The bell rings, signaling the end of class, but he's barely finished his lesson for the day. His students, however, have already checked out. One of them, a quiet boy named Shion, is singled out. The teacher can only watch, his patience wearing thin. Yeah, this guy needs some serious anger management. A fellow teacher finds him completely drained in the staff room. He claims to be fine, revealing a drawer that's basically a mini pharmacy. His colleague, Ms. Dango, believes the students need stronger guidance. Mr. Haizora suggests a more hands-on approach to discipline, but she reminds him that one social media post could ruin his career. Their debate is cut short by the arrival of the head teacher. He lectures them on how weak modern educators have become. Ms. Dango tries to warn Mr. Haizora about the school's delicate politics, because that's exactly what a man on the edge needs to hear: more rules. His methods, however, leave another faculty member utterly horrified. The head teacher berates him for upsetting an important student. Mr. Haizora realizes that trying to care is a fool's errand. He's told that students are customers and education is a business. The best approach, he's advised, is to simply give up on his ideals. But Ms. Dango still believes in the passionate, hot-blooded teacher. Mr. Haizora admits he once shared those ideals too, until a past incident shattered that belief completely, leaving him with a deep-seated cynicism. His colleague finally notices the white patch in his hair, a totally normal sign of stress for a man of 30, and as another day ends at Gokusai Academy, Mr. Haizora walks home, convinced he can't be that pure teacher anymore. As he passes a classroom, he overhears a stray comment, but he feels a sudden, intense gaze upon him. He whips around, startled by the feeling. He scans the empty hallway but finds no one there. Shaking it off, he dismisses it as his imagination. But as he approaches his own classroom, he hears an unusual noise. A wave of dread washes over him. Inside, he finds Shion surrounded by his classmates, the center of their cruel amusement. His back is covered in notes, each one a small paper cut of mockery. The ringleaders watch on, calling it a simple communication issue, a twisted justification for their cruelty. Mr. Haizora's mind screams, "Bullying!" But the head teacher's warning echoes in his mind, and Shion's silent plea hangs heavy in the air. Mr. Haizora is paralyzed, caught between cynicism and duty. A fragmented memory surfaces, a voice of encouragement. The next tormentor steps up, a smile on her face. But her hand is caught midair by Mr. Haizora. She glares back, telling him he's crossed a line. Oh, the irony. He admits that for a moment he hesitated. But some lines once crossed can never be taken back. Shion can only stare, his voice a whisper. And in that instant, something inside him finally breaks. She plays the victim, calling him a creep for stopping her. The commotion draws the attention of the head teacher and Ms. Dango. His students have already captured the moment, ready for a social media firestorm. A pencil case on a nearby desk suddenly clicks open, and something shoots out with incredible speed. The real lesson is about to begin. The student who was filming suddenly cries out in agony. His words become a frantic, broken chant, and then his head, along with another's, simply detaches. Mr. Haizora stares in utter disbelief. The other students are just as horrified. He sees their disembodied heads floating, questioning his own reality. But a girl with pointed ears calmly directs his attention outside, where a colossal, unblinking eye fills the sky, staring down at the school with an alien intensity. Guess social media is the least of his problems now. A black sphere hurtles towards the school, warping space around it. The students begin to distort, pulled towards the strange anomaly. Mr. Haizora screams for everyone to evacuate, vowing to protect those left behind. But the sphere has found its target, a voice echoing from within. A strange mark flashes across his forehead, branding him. A mysterious voice speaks of guiding the children through this trial. A lesson, if you will, to help them achieve a great leap forward. And Mr. Haizora clenches his fist, accepting the challenge. The entire classroom is ripped from reality, isolated in a void. Everyone, including a terrified Ms. Dango, is pulled into the vortex. The voice announces the first trial: simply survive. Mr. Haizora's eyes widen in disbelief. The classroom is a wreck, students scattered and injured. He frantically tries to assess the situation. A student confirms there are injuries, but everyone is accounted for. The ones who were distorting find themselves whole again. But a sudden scream shatters the brief moment of relief. It's the same pointed ear girl staring out the window in terror. She urges everyone to see what she's seeing, and what he sees outside defies all logic. Their school is now stranded in some kind of dark alien jungle. The students crowd the windows, demanding answers he doesn't have. And for the first time, Mr. Hyzora is truly at a loss for words. But he forces himself to take charge, promising to protect them all. One of the ringleaders scoffs at his teacher's sudden hero complex, but his phone shows nothing but a single mocking error message. Frustrated, he decides to investigate the situation himself. Mr. Hyzora desperately tries to stop him from leaving the room, because listening to the teacher has never been their strong suit. He stops dead in his tracks, seeing something unexpected in the hallway. A grotesque, one-eyed creature blocks the entire hallway. Their bravado instantly evaporates into pure terror. The creature's maw opens impossibly wide, as the students can only scream in horror. They turn and flee for their lives. But the beast smashes through the wall in pursuit. The ringleader falls, crying out for his friend. The girl, Kana, is frozen on the floor, and the monster looms directly over her, ready to strike. Suddenly, they're screaming for the very teachers they just ignored. But the head teacher screams that this is no time to rely on him. He turns and flees, abandoning his post completely. Guess he's not tenured. The students can only stare in shock at his cowardice. As the monster's jaw opens impossibly wide, and Kana lets out a final, terrified scream. But Mr. Hyzora dives in, pushing her out of harm's way. His face is a mask of grim determination. She can only look back, calling his name in disbelief. He takes the full force of the creature's attack. And in that moment of agony, something awakens within him. Kana can only scream his name in absolute horror. He grits his teeth against the overwhelming pain, as the creature's jaws close around him completely. And in one swift motion, he's gone. The monster lets out a satisfied gulp. Well, that's one way to get tenure. Kana is left paralyzed, tears streaming down her face. The other students are frozen in disbelief. Even Ms. Dango can't comprehend what just happened. Shion stares, realizing his teacher was just swallowed whole. Mr. Hyzora finds himself in a dark, slick tunnel, realizing he's inside the beast. He berates himself for abandoning his cynical resolve. He remembers always sticking his neck out for others. And now he's about to die for nothing. But a powerful voice suddenly screams at him, jolting him from his despair. A different voice now echoes in his mind, a relentless chant of encouragement. It demands to know if he truly wants to live. The voice asks if he has any regrets or unfulfilled dreams. Perfect time for an existential crisis, really. And Mr. Hyzora realizes that of course he does. A memory surfaces of a younger, more idealistic self. He recalls a confrontation with a smug student in an alleyway. The student patronizingly lectures him about his misguided efforts. He remembers his own past as a formidable fighter, taking down entire gangs. But the student saw his violence as a way to fill an inner void. The accusation hits a nerve, and Hyzora's temper flares. He clenches his fist, ready to silence the condescending remarks. He throws a punch, only for it to be blocked by a book. The impact sends a sharp pain through his knuckles. The student calmly reveals he was prepared for another attack. And a strange symbol suddenly burns itself onto Hyzora's palm. The student holds up the book, an autobiography of Gandhi. Hyzora can only stare, completely dumbfounded. The student tells him that you can't just punch your way through life. He explains that everyone gets lost, and no one knows the one true path. But Hyzora remains defiant. The student simply urges him to keep struggling alongside him, and so began a series of intense study sessions, leading to a moment of pure joy as Hyzora passes his exams. Guess the pen really is mightier than the fist. The student then reveals his own goal, to become a teacher who guides the lost. A memory that snaps Mr. Hyzora back to the present, his eyes burning with a new resolve. He refuses to let his story end here. He screams his vow to become an even greater teacher than his friend. The voice in his head seems to approve, and with a surge of new strength, he punches his way through the beast's flesh. But he's shocked to see his own right hand. The voice explains that it has lent him its arm, an arm that will grant him a mysterious new power. Guess that's one way to get a helping hand. Outside, the students watch as the monster begins to convulse. Ms. Dango can only stare, frozen in place. But the creature isn't done yet, lashing out at the pointed ear girl. The ringleader can only watch, his face pale with fear. Ms. Dango knows she has to help, but she's frozen in place. The student tries to rally his courage, but his bravado is gone. But someone else steps forward without hesitation. It's Shion, pulling the pointed ear girl out of the monster's path. Ms. Dango stares, completely stunned by his bravery. Even the bully is shocked by the quiet boy's sudden action. The girl he saved calls out his name in disbelief. He admits he was scared, but wants to be brave like his teacher. Looks like someone was actually paying attention in class. And at that very moment, Mr. Hyzora erupts from inside the beast. He roars a command at the beast, stopping its attack just inches from his students. They can only stare, confused by the sudden halt. But Mr. Hyzora tells himself to press the advantage. The voice explains that his new arm has granted him a power, the power of the monster teacher, a title that comes with some seriously intimidating album art, an ability that allows him to command monsters to obey him. He grits his teeth, ready to struggle through this ordeal. He'll carry his ideals and the harsh reality with him, as he pushes forward even when lost. He roars that this monster is nothing, compared to the monster parents he's used to dealing with. Because unlike them, he's actually allowed to punch this one. A voice in his head screams a reminder about anger management. But he unleashes his iron fist of punishment anyway. A flurry of blows rains down on the beast, fueled by pure rage. All his pent-up frustration is finally let loose. He lands a devastating punch, sending a shockwave through the creature. His students can only watch in absolute awe at the display. Kana calls out his name, completely stunned by the teacher's transformation. He realizes he'd given up on the lessons his own teacher taught him. But he refuses to let his story end like this. As his resolve hardens, the creature before him begins to change. Its aggressive form softens, its rage seemingly extinguished. The monster collapses, now completely docile before him. He places a hand on the beast, a silent pact being formed. The voice confirms that the monster is now his subordinate. He is tasked with leading his students and his new pet out of this dungeon. The word dungeon hangs in the air, a chilling new reality. He turns to his students, who are still trying to process what they just saw. He admits he has no idea what's going on. But he remembers his mentor's words about life being a labyrinth, a place where no one truly knows the correct path, a memory that gives him a strange sense of calm. He rallies his students with a renewed fire, promising to lead them out of this nightmare together, and then immediately cringes at his own hot-blooded speech. The adrenaline wears off and he nearly collapses from blood loss. Guess heroics have a cooldown timer. Ms. Dango catches him, relieved he's alive but questioning his dramatic flair. He confesses he was just running on pure, unadulterated panic. The students are still processing the fight and Mr. Hyzora's new monster taming ability. The ringleader asks if he's completely lost his mind. But Mr. Hyzora is already busy teaching his new pet some tricks, proving that even interdimensional beasts can be good boys. The students can only watch in utter disbelief. After a quick pick-me-up, Mr. Hyzora reaffirms his duty to protect them. Ms. Dango looks on, worried about her colleague. He stands before the class, calling for an emergency meeting. He tells them they need to face the abnormal situation together. And the first step is to understand just how trapped they really are. He explains that with monsters lurking outside, leaving the classroom is not an option. He decides to scout the area himself, telling the others to barricade the door. But Ms. Dango immediately tries to stop him, arguing that it's far too dangerous for him to go alone. Even his new pet seems to think it's a terrible idea. She pulls out the school's emergency manual, pointing to the standard protocol, but he dismisses it, knowing their situation is anything but normal. Their debate is cut short by a sudden scream from down the hallway. They both turn, wondering who could have made that sound. A sharp cry echoes from the darkness. Mr. Hyzora suddenly remembers the head teacher. He and his new pet immediately rush towards the sound, leaving Ms. Dango to question his complete lack of self-preservation. But the hallway is completely deserted. He approaches the next corner with caution, peeking around it with his monster companion. He finds the next corridor just as empty. The path ahead splits, leading to a staircase, forcing him to wonder which direction to take, until the voice in his head reminds him of his new ability. It explains that he can now share his vision with his contracted monster. Mr. Hyzora reaches out, linking his senses with the creature. Their sight becomes one, a shared perspective. He's amazed he can process both views without getting confused. It's like having split-screen co-op in real life. With this power, they can scout separately and share information instantly. He sends his new companion down one of the hallways, giving it a command to search the path to the left. The creature obeys without question, turning the corner. Mr. Hyzora takes the other route, feeling less alone but still on edge. But he stops dead as a dark, ominous figure emerges from the shadows. A tall, featureless figure steps out from the darkness. Mr. Hyzora screams, identifying it as a faceless monster. He immediately throws a punch, believing in a preemptive strike. The blow connects as he yells at the creature, but the figure that falls is the head teacher, crying out in pain. His glasses clatter to the floor, broken. Mr. Hyzora freezes, realizing his grave mistake. The man apologizes, saying his face changed, and he was wearing a bald cap out of fear. So, not a monster, just a midlife crisis. Mr. Hyzora can only stare, completely speechless. The head teacher clutches his chest, claiming he was attacked by a monster and it's all over. But a sudden jolt of alarm runs through Mr. Hyzora. He screams into his mental link, telling his companion to look. Through the creature's eyes, he sees another monster in the hallway, and it's moving with impossible speed. It blazes past his own monster in a blur of motion. Mr. Hyzora realizes with horror that it's heading for the classroom, straight towards the door of Class 2E. Inside, Ms. Dango has the students huddled behind a barricade. She tries to keep them calm, telling them to pray for safety, and writes emergency evacuation rules on the board, because that's super helpful right now. The students sit in silence, their faces a mix of fear and despair. Ms. Dango tries to offer words of comfort, but she knows her platitudes are meaningless in this situation. A memory surfaces of a past bullying incident she failed to handle, a failure that led to a student transferring schools. After that, she became obsessed with enforcing the rules, a real stickler for the student handbook. But her rigid sense of duty often felt out of place in the real world. She learned that reality doesn't always need a by-the-book hero. She remembers watching a TV drama about a passionate teacher, dismissing it as fiction. The on-screen character's words about sincerity now echo with a bitter irony. She remembers the simple sincerity that once inspired her, words that made her believe teaching was a sacred calling, but the reality of her cynical colleagues was a harsh wake-up call. Even Mr. Hyzora, who usually had the most lifeless eyes of them all, she steels her resolve, vowing to be the one to protect her students. Just as a thunderous noise echoes from right outside the door, something slams into their barricade with incredible force. She can only stare in horror, wondering what it is. The makeshift wall shatters, glass and wood flying everywhere. And the monster from the hallway bursts into the classroom. So much for the emergency evacuation plan. Ms. Dango is paralyzed with fear, her mind struggling to comprehend the chaos. But the ringleader snaps into action, rallying his classmates to fight back. Even Shion grabs a broom, his face a mask of grim determination. They desperately try to hold the line, to stop the creature's advance. The ringleader thrusts a pole through the broken wall, a futile act of defiance. But an unblinking eye meets his gaze from the other side. His weapon is snapped in two with terrifying ease. Guess gym class didn't cover this. The presence in the hallway suddenly vanishes, leaving only an eerie silence in its wake. The students stand frozen, wondering if the monster has actually retreated. But a sudden sound from outside catches her attention. She wonders if it's coming from the classroom next door. A horrifying realization dawns on her. Something crashes through their window with impossible speed, shattering glass and sending debris flying everywhere. And a massive wolf-like creature now stands in the room. She realizes it must have jumped from the next room over. Its eyes glow with a terrifying intelligence. The ringleader, once so brave, is now frozen in fear. He tries to apologize, his bravado completely gone. Guess his broom foo wasn't up to snuff. The creature lets out a deafening, predatory roar. The ringleader can only stare, his makeshift weapon now useless. The other students are completely paralyzed with fear. But Ms. Dango, though terrified, finds her resolve. A memory of her cynical colleagues flashes through her mind. She remembers the students she failed to protect in the past, and a new determined fire ignites in her eyes. She charges forward, placing herself between the beast and her students. She screams that it's a teacher's duty to protect their class. Finally, someone read the job description and orders everyone to get away from the danger, but her brave stand is cut short by a sudden shock. As Mr. Hyzora bursts through the wall on his monster companion, the head teacher clings on for dear life, probably rethinking his career choices. Ms. Dango can only stare, calling out his name in disbelief. The wolf-like creature ignores the commotion and lunges forward. But Mr. Hyzora roars out an emergency slogan. His monster pet intercepts the attack head-on. A strange tentacle wraps around the wolf's snout, holding it back with surprising strength. And Mr. Hyzora leaps forward, ready to finish the fight. He unleashes another furious punch, screaming at the beast. The blow connects, sending the wolf flying across the room. It crashes into the rubble, completely stunned by the attack. But he decides there's no need to finish it off. A simple command will do. A familiar symbol glows on the creature's forehead, sealing its fate. The voice confirms his magic has tamed the beast, completing the contract. He's building a whole menagerie at this point. Mr. Hyzora clenches his fist, the adrenaline finally starting to fade. A wave of dizziness suddenly washes over him. He collapses to the floor as Ms. Dango rushes to his side, but he insists he's fine, as long as he has his trusty energy drinks. Ms. Dango looks down, her face a mask of regret. She apologizes to the collapsed Mr. Hyzura. She admits that if they had left the room as he suggested, they might have been ambushed. But he tells her she could only act according to the manual. He says that in the end, her words were just words. And what truly matters is the outcome. Ms. Dango is left speechless by his blunt assessment. He asks what would have happened if he hadn't arrived in time. He explains that no one can know the future, but it's an adult's job to take responsibility for their choices. The pointed ear girl chimes in, saying that having different opinions is crucial for making the right call. He points out that she was supposed to be the one wrangling the students. He reminds her that she was the one who was supposed to be in charge. The students chime in, agreeing with his assessment. Ms. Dango is left flustered by their unified front. Mr. Hyzura leans back, admitting that maybe he was too harsh. But he tells her that her by-the-book seriousness is exactly what they need. In her mind, he suddenly transforms into a dashing, dramatic hero. Talk about a glow-up. She violently shakes the thought away, much to his confusion. But a new resolve seems to have taken hold of her. She declares that they must work together for the students, leaving him completely stunned. But they had no idea that this was just the beginning of their trial, or that one of them would soon disappear from this classroom forever. Mr. Hyzura gets to his feet, telling everyone it's time to move. Ms. Dango can only stare, completely bewildered. She reminds him he was just against leaving, but he insists this is their chance. He looks at the wreckage, admitting the classroom is no longer safe. They agree that the gym is their best bet for a secure location. She suddenly remembers the head teacher, hoping he's all right, who is currently sporting a rather large souvenir from their last encounter. Mr. Hyzura ignores the man's bruised ego and rallies the class to move out. The students cautiously gather at the shattered classroom door. But the pointed ear girl hangs back, a troubled look on her face. Her eyes betray a deep sense of unease. She nervously approaches Ms. Dango to ask a question. She explains that she needs to use the restroom before they leave. Ms. Dango insists that now is hardly the time. Even in an apocalypse, nature calls. The girl's face flushes with embarrassment and frustration. But Ms. Dango's expression suddenly softens with understanding. She agrees, but tells her to clear it with Mr. Hyzura first. The student accepts, asking her teacher to keep it quiet. The student approaches Mr. Hyzura with her request. He immediately shuts her down, saying it's far too dangerous. But Ms. Dango argues that small comforts are a huge mental support. She insists that even in a crisis, their dignity must be protected. Mr. Hyzura is caught off guard by her passionate plea. He weighs the risk, knowing he can't leave the others unprotected. But he finally relents, agreeing to the plan. They arrive at the restrooms down the hall, and he posts a guard to watch the door. Because of course he does. His monster companion stands watch, ready to alert him to any danger. Inside, Kana finds the water isn't running, her anxiety growing. A memory of the monster attack flashes in her mind, a moment of pure terror. She runs out, overwhelmed by the humiliation of the situation. She remembers being saved by Mr. Hyzura, calling it the worst. Because in her world, she despises anything she deems lame. Her face twists with a fierce, almost obsessive conviction. She believes that people and things without beauty have no value. And since she is beautiful, she must always be right. Narcissism is a hell of a drug. But a flicker of doubt crosses her mind. She admits that for a split second, her lame teacher actually looked cool. She tries to shake the thought away, denying it with every fiber of her being. But she stops, a sudden sense of unease washing over her. She notices the mirror on the wall, wondering if it was always so thick. She can't recall seeing it when she first came in. Guess she was a little preoccupied. And in its reflection, a twisted, monstrous version of herself smiles back. Its eyes glow with a malevolent light. Kana can only let out a terrified scream. As a serpentine creature bursts out from the mirror's surface, she screams that a monster has appeared from the glass. The creature's tail wraps around her, pulling her into its grasp. Her desperate screams for help echo down the hall. Outside, his monster companion immediately senses the danger. Inside, the serpentine creature drags Kana across the tiled floor. And his loyal pet smashes through the door to intervene. It lashes out with its tongue, but the new monster is surprisingly agile. Kana watches, confused by her rescuer's clumsy movements. Mr. Hyzura realizes his companion is fighting on its own, willing to get hurt to protect one of his students. The serpentine beast lands a powerful blow, sending his companion reeling, and in an instant, the tables have turned completely. Guess this new monster didn't read the good boy memo. The serpentine creature asserts its dominance over its fallen foe. An eye is ripped from its socket, a gruesome trophy of the fight. The new monster stands tall, a terrifying figure of victory. Kana can only scream, her hope completely shattered. She watches her protector fall, berating it for losing so easily. The creature's glowing eyes now fixate on her. Its tail coils around her, squeezing the air from her lungs. She realizes this might be the end, a pathetic death for someone like her. A memory surfaces of a much younger, more innocent self, and in that moment of despair, a new resolve ignites within her. A memory she desperately wants to forget flashes before her eyes. Her mother's voice echoes, calling her a gloomy child for always reading. She learned early that a woman's worth was tied to her beauty, a lesson that became her mother's favorite mantra. And in a cruel world, those words proved to be true. So she simply adapted to survive. A classic, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em strategy. Transforming herself into the beautiful, popular girl she is today, her world changed, revealing just how shallow people truly are. She learned that anything deemed lame was hated without question. And she decided it was the fault of those who refused to change. A memory of a boy pleading for someone to stop. A plea that now echoes her own desperate cries. Her eyes widen in absolute terror. The monster taunts her, a twisted sermon on beauty and ugliness. But Mr. Hyzora crashes the party, riding his new wolf companion. Kana can only stare, calling his name in disbelief. He roars at the creature to unhand his student. He leaps into action, thankful his new pets gave him the opening he needed. He calls out to his first companion, who struggles to its feet, and orders it to protect the others while he finishes the fight here. He sends his wolf companion charging forward, vowing that together they will take this monster down. The wolf sinks its teeth into the creature's tail, its claws digging in deep, holding it in place. Mr. Hyzora screams at his pet not to let go. He realizes that even monsters have type advantages. Guess snakes are weak to wolves. And now it's time for some educational guidance. He yells that the restroom is a public space. As he smashes his fist directly into the mirror, the blow connects, shattering the glass and staggering the beast. He confirms the contract is complete, basically collecting them like Pokemon at this point. He notices the mysterious voice in his head is strangely silent this time. But the adrenaline rush quickly begins to fade, and he nearly collapses from sheer exhaustion. He reaches out, asking Kana if she's all right, but she can only look away, assuming he's mocking her. She lashes out, admitting she knows how everyone sees her. But even so, she breaks down, screaming that she's the lamest one of all. He simply looks at her and says she's not. Her tears fall, a silent admission of her own vulnerability. Mr. Hyzora scratches his head, admitting he doesn't really know what to say. He tells her he's always seen her desperately trying to hide her weakness, but he knows that she's been confronting her pain this whole time. He insists that beauty is a much bigger concept than she realizes, because he too has his own ideals of what it means to be cool. A memory of his friend, who wanted to be a teacher who could smile through any hardship. A truly next-level dedication to the job. He admits that even if he seems lame, that's the kind of man he's striving to become. His unexpected sincerity leaves her completely speechless. He tells her that everyone has their own kind of beauty hidden within. He says that if she's going to trample on someone else's ideals, then as a teacher he has no choice but to stop her. Kana can only listen, his words hitting her with unexpected force. He explains that he's found beauty in both literature and martial arts, and that people study to understand the things they don't yet know. His philosophy strikes a nerve, awakening a long-dormant memory. She remembers a box of old books her mother had thrown away, and the simple, beautiful world she once found within their pages. A world before lame was her primary vocabulary word, a world where stories and characters would leap from the page, and her imagination was the most beautiful thing of all. Her tough exterior finally shatters completely. She bows deeply, apologizing over and over again. Mr. Hyzora panics, wondering if he said too much. She yells at him not to look at her, calling him a creep for lecturing her in the restroom. Well, that's one way to say thank you. He just smiles, relieved that her fiery spirit is back. As he turns to leave, Kana watches him with a new light in her eyes. She realizes her new monster companion was guiding her all along, but her old insecurities still echo in the back of her mind. Watching him lead the creature away, she can't help but feel a blush creep onto her face. Their destination is the gym, now resting at the bottom of a colossal subterranean cave. Mr. Hyzora wipes the sweat from his brow, a look of sheer relief on his face. He announces to the entire class that their evacuation to the gym is complete. The students are visibly relieved, the ringleader calling out to a safe and sound Kana. Ms. Dango embraces the pointed ear girl, just glad she's okay. He knows the students can finally rest for a moment, but he still needs to assess the true nature of their prison. First, he gathers the school's emergency food rations. Then he reinforces the entrances, making sure no more monsters can get in. He proudly declares that their new mobile classroom is ready for anything. The voice reveals one of his pets has a dimensional stomach for storage. Well, that's one way to pack for a trip. The students sit on the gym floor, completely drained from the ordeal. But Mr. Hyzora claps his hands, his energy seemingly endless. He tells them they've reached a safe haven and can finally rest. But he's already planning his next move, scouting the area alone. Ms. Dango immediately protests, telling him he's being far too reckless. He turns to her, his expression unyielding. He leans in close, reminding her that their food rations are limited. They can't afford to just sit and wait for a rescue that may never arrive. She suggests he could just send his monster companions to do the scouting. But he explains that seeing a path is not the same as walking it himself. A student points to a computer, having found a digital map of the school. Mr. Hyzora realizes he'll need a few more hands for this mission. Ms. Dango immediately volunteers, but he tells her to stay and protect the students. He then nominates the head teacher to accompany him instead. He tries to convince the man by praising his knowledge of geography. But the head teacher mutters that his salary doesn't cover monster slaying. As the reluctant party prepares to leave, an unexpected voice calls out. They turn to find Cheyenne volunteering to join the scouting team. He insists that he can be useful for exploration and gathering supplies. Mr. Hyzora appreciates the gesture, but tells him it's far too dangerous. But the ringleader scoffs at Cheyenne's heroics, turning to Kana for support. He calls the whole display utterly lame. But Kana tells him that his attitude is what's truly lame. Her sharp rebuke leaves him completely stunned. The pointed ear girl then steps forward, also volunteering for the mission. The ringleader tries to call Kana back, confused by her sudden change. She simply states that she refuses to do anything she finds uncool, and tells him he'd be useless on the mission anyway. Guess he's not on the A-team. Her words send him into a furious rage. He screams that he's more useful than all of them combined. And so the newly formed scouting party steps out from the gym into the vast alien cavern that surrounds them. Mr. Hyzora sighs, realizing he now has even more students to protect. The ringleader, however, is completely mesmerized by the strange new world. Mr. Hyzora notes that the cave is a closed space, lit only by glowing rocks. He asks the head teacher for any insight, but gets nothing. Guess geology wasn't his strong suit. But the voice in his head suddenly identifies the rock as a sunstone. His sudden outburst leaves the pointed ear girl completely confused. He realizes that he's the only one who can hear the mysterious voice. He demands answers, asking the entity how they can all get home. He yells at the voice, demanding to know what's happening, but the entity in his head seems to be ignoring his questions. His students can only watch him argue with thin air. Guess the stress is finally getting to him. He turns back to them, a new clarity in his eyes. He explains that the world didn't change. Their school was moved. The pointed ear girl asks if they'll ever be able to return home. Mr. Hyzora looks back at her with fierce determination and promises that he will get them all back safely. His words hang in the air, a beacon of hope for the lost students. The ringleader, however, is more concerned about his dry throat. Mr. Hyzora tells him to be patient as their water is limited, but a faint dripping sound echoes through the cavern. The ringleader's head snaps up, his attention caught. He realizes it's the sound of falling water, and without a second thought, he sprints off into the distance. He glances back, a triumphant look on his face. In the distance, he spots a small waterfall. He proudly declares that he's the one who found their salvation. Mr. Hyzora screams for him to stop, but the student ignores him completely. He sees this as his chance to finally prove his worth. He's haunted by his recent failures and Kana's sudden change. He believes finding this water source will restore his status, because in his mind he absolutely must be number one. A memory surfaces of a large, sterile home. He's a young boy sitting at a long table with his father, who lectures him that being unique is just an excuse for losers. The boy can only listen, the pressure mounting on his small shoulders. His father explains that everyone knows the tallest mountain, but anything less than first place is utterly worthless. Guess second place is the first loser in this family. A lesson drilled into him by a man obsessed with absolute victory. A life spent under the crushing pressure to always be number one. A constant, desperate climb to escape the curse of mediocrity. Because being the best meant everyone would flock to his side. It meant he had the right to look down on everyone else. And it meant he could get away with anything. Back in the present, he pants, having finally reached the cliff's edge. His eyes widen in disbelief at what he sees. A magnificent waterfall cascades down into a crystal-clear pool. He's found an oasis, a symbol of his triumph. He sprints towards it, sure that nothing could possibly go wrong now. But his foot slips on the slick, mossy rock. He tumbles over the edge, still trying to boast about his discovery. The others can only watch as the head teacher dryly remarks on his failure. Mr. Hyzora looks down, his expression unreadable. And with a slight smirk, he declares the boy is finally number one. In the ringleader's mind, Shion and the head teacher erupt in cheers. Even Kana fawns over him, completely won over by his greatness. As he plummets, he sees a bright light in the sky. He imagines a rescue team arriving, all thanks to his efforts. A fantasy where he's hailed as a hero, surrounded by adoring fans. A fantasy where he's the hero, completely oblivious to the danger. But his heroic daydream is cut short by the sight of 1,000 teeth, as a massive plant monster emerges from the waterfall to greet him. Mr. Hyzora screams his name, snapping him back to a terrifying reality. The ringleader's eyes widen in absolute horror. He's surrounded by the creature's many snapping jaws. His heroic fantasy shatters into a million terrified pieces. Back at the cliff's edge, a foot slips on the slick rock, and Mr. Hyzora dives in right after him. Guess the school's insurance doesn't cover this. He screams for his monster companion to save the falling student. His monster companion lands on the ringleader, cushioning the boy's fall with its own body. Its long tongue wraps around the student, pulling him back from the edge of the cliff. Mr. Hyzora catches his breath, realizing he's getting too old for this. He realizes the plant monster lures its prey to the water's edge, and that its strange appearance has a hypnotic effect. He decides a preemptive strike is the only option. His fist connects, shattering one of its many heads. He roars that this one will be joining his team as well. But the creature's jaw snaps shut around his fist. Mr. Hyzora's eyes widen in shock. As the plant monster's many heads regenerate instantly, he realizes with horror that his taming ability isn't working. The voice in his head explains he's reached his monster limit, a detail it probably should have mentioned a little sooner.